the recording. So thank you very much for joining us today to talk about hypothesis and how it can improve your discussion boards, in the case of my class, kind of replace them, and increase interaction with the text for your students. So today it's me, Summerlin Webb, English and Humanities instructor, Allison Cochran and Shauna Jones, both also English and Humanities instructors here at the college. I will start us off talking a little bit about what hypothesis is and how we can use it, and then Allison and Shauna will go over some of the ways that they have been using hypothesis in their classes and walk through that. And I will walk through setting up an assignment in hypothesis, and we'll have some time to practice and play and address any questions or concerns that you may have about hypothesis. And I've had a lot of coffee, so if at any point I need to slow down, please let me know. So, thank you for the reminder, Shauna. We do have you added to a hypothesis training course in Blackboard, so you may want to go ahead and log on if you're working on multiple screens or multiple machines. You can also do that later in the session if you would like. All right, so what is hypothesis? One of the fun things about hypothesis is that the name doesn't really tell you what it is. Hypothesis is a collaborative annotation platform that is fully integrated into Blackboard. It works with non-password protected sites and OCR PDFs. If you can highlight words, if you can highlight text on the PDF, then it typically will work with hypothesis. When we say non-password protected sites, we mean anything that is open to anyone on the general web. So for instance, a lot of news sites now require you to log on to see content. If it requires a log on, it's not going to work. But say Poetry Foundation, you'll see us use that later today. Anybody can access that anywhere, anytime. So you can use those websites. Hypothesis is also gradable. You don't have to enable grading, but it is, of course, we know that sometimes you have to do that to get students to participate. So you can grade or write in hypothesis very easily. A recent addition to hypothesis is that groups are enabled, so you can set up groups in Blackboard and create group assignments. We won't be going over that today. That's a whole other session, and I actually have a session recording from the folks at Hypothesis, so if some of you are interested in doing that, I can send that information to you. Hypothesis is easy and intuitive to use, and no identifiable student data is collected. Everything just lives right there in Blackboard. So if that sort of security or data collection is a concern, something you don't have to worry about. So the way hypothesis works, and we'll walk through everything step by step later, you create the assignment in Blackboard, you link to the site or you upload a PDF to the assignment, and you and your students can highlight and annotate and respond to one another's annotations. You can refresh to see the annotations in real time. You can reorganize the annotations by newest or oldest, or view by the individual students. You can use GIFs and images in your annotations. Shauna's going to show us what it looks like when you are using the images. You can enable grading, and you can hide the highlighting for a clean document to peruse, which is helpful. You know, I usually put up a clean downloadable document and the hypothesis annotation, but if you are just doing the hypothesis annotation, it can, you know, be kind of cluttered and distracting, so you can turn off the highlighting. So there are many ways that we can use hypothesis. Of course, as English instructors, we jumped on this because we want to focus on text. It can be used to enhance reading comprehension and check reading comprehension. It can be used in language courses for collaborative translation. If you have an image that will allow for highlighting, you can use it for labeling. It can be useful in history courses for primary source analysis. It could be useful for annotating directly on case study documents. Annotating, providing feedback, and asking questions on assignments and syllabi. I love using it for this, and Shauna's going to walk us through that a little bit later. Guided reading. You can, assign particular parts of a text to a group in class. There are a lot of ways that it could be a lot of fun. So anywhere in any discipline there are images or text to work with, Hypothesis could come in handy. So Allison, I will turn it over to you to share the student sample and discuss the interactive content learning.
Hey guys, so I also really love using Hypothesis for a lot of reasons. One of them is that I use it as a building block sometimes to help them make better connections than just throwing a reading at them and asking them to do it on their own. So this is an example of an assignment I do in English 112, and this one's related to the content I want them to learn. So if you're teaching an LN section or even our blended sections where they might be getting some important content outside of a assigned lecture time, it can be very difficult for students to really engage with it, even read it, because if it's not assigned to a grade. So I like to use Hypothesis to kind of catch them in that and help them interact and really see the text. So for this example I'm about to show you, I gave them an article from Writing Commons, and they had to note something in the article that they've done before and that was successful for them as a student, or something they've not thought about. And then I asked them to engage with their peers and share their thoughts, to make sure that for some person maybe the strategy worked but it didn't for you, or if it didn't work for you but someone else is like, oh well, I changed it to do this, they're getting that extra help. So this is a sample of actual student responses that I've just screenshot and taken out. And what I really love to see is that they were building on each other. So the original student said, I've always looked at assignments as nothing more than something I just had to do, but if I'm looking at it as a puzzle, it could be interesting. And then other students just started adding ideas of yeah, this helps me too, or I try to challenge, intellectually challenge myself to retain the information, or it's a task to do. And so, I'm sorry, it's not a task to do. And they gave ideas of reading it twice, making annotations. So instead of me just having them read this article with a little blurb about, what I want you to learn from this, they can start interacting with each other and discussing hey, I saw this too, or hey, this isn't working for me. Does anyone have advice? So I like to use Hypothesis to help them engage with the content I want them to learn better, but also they can then replace a discussion board with Hypothesis, like Summerlin mentioned earlier. In English, a lot of our discussion boards are based on a text. So also English 112, we were practicing how to do literary analysis before their next essay. And so everyone was assigned a different fable or folk tale. And they had to identify the theme and then find and put it in there, but then find 2 different spots where they had text that connected to that theme and explain why it connected for them. So instead of just having a discussion board where they just type it out and try to copy and paste in, they can interactively do this and go throughout the whole piece and visibly show each other. So what that looked like, for example, was this. And so this way I showed you, Summerlin mentioned earlier, the highlighting. You can turn it on or off, but as you can see, this student, they are blue, that's the highlighting they clicked on. So this line also relates back to the theme, because the tortoise lied about his richness. He became overly greedy, not only with his family, with his town. And someone else was like, oh, you're right, that was greedy and boastful. This led him to be careless, So that because they're directly in the text, they can see those connections better, instead of doing what I call a quote bomb, where they just copy a quote in and say, this quote proves it, and then they move on. Well, how does it prove it? You've left it basically to go wherever, be interpreted however you want. So this is a good building block to teaching how to make direct references to text and make those connections, but in an interactive way. And I have seen a definite improvement in engagement with my students with text by using this, because it just helps, take them one step closer. And then in their essays, this is copying over, because while they're not doing a hypothesis for their essay, they can say, hey, I learned this skill here. This is an exact thought. Now I've thought about, exact quote, excuse me. Here's my analysis thought. Okay, now how can I put that into a paragraph? And then the last sample I wanted to, oh wait, this is just another example, sorry, where students were commenting back and forth. So like, I agree, or like, hey, I think there's multiple messages. This might be one of them. However, like blah, blah, blah. So it does allow for like back and forth really nicely for that engagement. But this is what I was transitioning to is it doesn't only have to work in English. This is an example from one of our history instructors, Laura Abels. It's American History 2. She wanted to find a way to go cross-curricular and bring in art into history and show how they can interact and they interweave with each other. So they had to read an article called Abstract Expressionism in the CIA, Waging a Cultural Cold War. And she did small groups for their writings, and they had to annotate and respond. And then these annotations and activities they did launched them into a bigger activity where they had to write a short like essay assignment on how does this improve, and just to show you how the history students were interacting with it, not just English students, so we're different possibly mindset here. They were also showing really great commentary and picking out specific text and discussing it. And I can't click on it to show you, but one thing I forgot to mention earlier, and I'll erase this, I promise. But when you look at the interactions, they show you what the original text was they're talking about. So even if you don't want to see the highlights, you can still see that interaction. So there's so much that can be done with discussion board, text interaction, content learning, other than just having them read and read and read and maybe write a journal. This allows for interactive discussion and building step by step that analysis that not every student comes to, the class having those skills. But here I'm going to pass it to Shauna to show you other maybe non-graded ways, or graded, either way, you can go with them.
Good afternoon. Yeah, and I can't remember if you mentioned this, but if you click on the student's comment, it will jump to that point in the text directly to their highlight too. So you can kind of navigate based on that if you'd like. So the primary thing that I use this for, that I've been using it for the past few semesters, has been to have students annotate the course syllabi and then the assignment sheets for their major assignments. And this is a great way. I do this even with my seated classes. I'll give it to them the class before and say, review it, note any questions, so that when I go over it in class, I already know what questions they have and I can tackle those as it goes along. So it's a great way to identify those questions in advance, to get a sense of whether or not they understand the material. This is a big thing that if you've ever seen me do one of these before, you know that I am very much into reflection as a tool, not only to kind of check in on your students, but also to make sure that you're doing a good job conveying information. So if I have a bunch of students highlight one particular concept or, vocabulary word, that means that maybe I should use a different word if they're struggling with it. Like for instance, recent assignment sheet in my 112 class, I used the term academia. And that was something that several students were like, I've never heard of this. So I'm like, okay, next time I do this, I'll use a different term or define it. It's been a great tool for fostering connection between students in online courses, because especially in composition courses, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to interact. So this has been a great way to get them thinking about the same content before they go off on their own and write a paper about it. And it just makes them feel, discussion boards are kind of clunky, and if that's the only way we're having them interact, this just gives them a different avenue with a different feel to make it seem like they have more opportunities for that. And it's also been useful for students that we have in the classroom who maybe have some anxiety about speaking out loud or who are afraid to ask questions. And we all know that usually if one student has a question, more than one student has that same question. So this is an alternate way that I can make sure that everyone's being heard in a method that works best for them and their communication style. So got an example here of where I've had students annotate the syllabus, and I will give them a deadline, and then what I'll do is go through, some folks prefer to respond directly into this, but I will go through and copy and paste all those questions and answer them all in one thing and send it out in an announcement. So I make sure that all my students have those answers. That's been really, really useful for clearing things up before it becomes a problem for students. So another way that I wanted to, so here's an example from an assignment sheet clarifying a concept here, but I wanted to show you an example of a few different ways that you might be able to use this despite, or in any curriculum. Folks tend to think, oh, it's annotation, it's going to be mostly English classes, but there's a lot of different applications. So this is just some stuff that we brainstormed as folks who don't know things outside these disciplines. For any sort of developmental course, it could be a really great tool for reading comprehension or teaching active learning strategy or active reading strategies. In foreign languages, this seems like a really neat way to do collaborative translations, or even identifying idioms and phrases that don't translate well from one language to another. So I thought about trying to put together an example of that, but I'm way rusty on my Spanish and I probably would not have done a good job. So other ideas here in sciences, health sciences, technologies are more hands-on things where students tend to go beyond alphanumeric text. There's the potential to do practice assignments where you give them, here's a human skeleton, let's label all the parts, or to look at specific case studies of things that have happened and kind of analyze them together. Even exam review and study guides and things like that. And that is a great way, again, to identify concepts that maybe you need to explain a little bit more in future classes if enough students are, struggling with it. Could use it in business and marketing, anything that looks at examples of, real business letters or articles or whatnot. And then, of course, history. Allison just showed that example, but analyzing primary sources, comparing perspectives on the same event, as long as you can put things into a PDF together, you can have it all in one assignment. So maybe I take someone's account of a particular historic event and someone else's account and combine them into one PDF and give them an opportunity to kind of annotate differences within, all in one place. So I wanted to show you, I'm going to switch the screen over here. In our training course, I wanted to show you an example of, hang on just a second, of how you can use this as a multimedia sort of thing. So in this example of different approaches to using the tool, this is an assignment that I used in my American Lit 2 class where we're studying Harlem Renaissance poetry, but I wanted them to get a full sense of, the art and music and other cultural importance. So there's all kind of one interconnected, interdisciplinary thing. So I have them analyze a poem and then go and look for images by Harlem Renaissance artists that give kind of a visual reflection of the themes, ideas, concepts that they're seeing within the poem. So here, like I was saying, if you click on it, it'll go directly to that student's highlighted portion of it. And all you've got to do to add, here, I'll show you right here. When you want to add an annotation with a picture, there's just a nice little thing here, and then you copy and paste the link in there, and boom. So it's pretty cool. I really like the idea of being able to bring in visual stuff to go along with our alphanumeric text. So So let me go back to the presentation.
While you're heading back to the presentation, Shauna, I was going to add an idea that I had while I was adding some stuff to the site this morning. I was thinking too that it could be a really great use in ACA classes, having groups of students maybe annotate a degree plan or something along those lines.
That's a good idea, yeah. Can y'all think of, those of you who are new to this tool, can you think of any ways that you might be able to incorporate it in your own discipline? Just, you know, if you think about it, put it in the chat here, or if you come up with something. So yeah, this is, and it's something that you don't necessarily have to, you know, redo your entire course at one time. What I've been doing is, as I'm updating my courses, I kind of look at my existing assignments and think, is this something that could easily be converted to this sort of thing? So I've kind of just been updating as I go along, but student response for this has been really great, and I'm looking for more opportunities to bring it in and to really foster these conversations. So that's where I will turn it over to Summerlin, and we'll look at how to do the things.
One more piece that I wanted to mention too with using Hypothesis, it's really been great in I'm teaching a stacked class on Monday nights. I have an English 112 where some of my students are in Collaborate and some of my students are in the classroom. And we've gotten to the literature unit and I'm really struggling to get people to speak up in class. So I've been doing some assignments where I will highlight parts of the text and put a note on there and give them a group number. I haven't officially set up the groups in Blackboard because I kind of never know who's going to be in class on a given night. And I will either have them do a group assignment with it or annotate individually and use those comments to start our in-class discussion. I did that with a poem the other night where nobody wanted to say anything, and I said, go in and annotate. And then I went through and I would see, you know, a person sitting right in front of me has said this, and I would ask her a question and kind of get the conversation going that way. And students started to respond to each other in the text, and I kind of felt like I raised my class from the dead that night using Hypothesis. So it's been really great, and I can respond to them there. I can respond in a comment on the text, or I can do what Shauna had mentioned and send out kind of a quick explanation answering all the questions. I also like to use this in conjunction with my checkpoint assignments in my online classes where I do a video every week, so it can kind of give me some direction in that way. So the next question is, how do we create a hypothesis assignment? So I'm going to share my screen and walk through the process. I'll also mention that I have a document here, how to set up a hypothesis assignment in Blackboard, that's complete with screenshots. And if you have any questions or need any help setting up an assignment, I'm glad to help. Distance Ed is glad to help, and I can also put you in touch with our hypothesis rep. So this is pretty simple. So go wherever you want to put your assignment in the course. We're hanging out here in the course content section. I'm going to go ahead and put it here. So you will just go to build content and scroll down until you see hypothesis. You do have to scroll down a ways and click on hypothesis. So then you get a very familiar looking screen here. So I'm going to name my assignment. I'm going to put annotation in front of it so that my students know where they're heading. For Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. If you have some instructions, you can put them here. I'm going to say, please provide at least one comment or question on the poem. Now, do not add an attachment here. If you have an assignment sheet or something you need to add, sure, but do not attach the file you want them to work with. I'm going to first demonstrate a URL, and then I will demonstrate a file. So this one is going to be a link. Make sure you do not attach anything here regardless. If you want to enable evaluation, if you want to grade the assignment, you'll click yes, and you'll put in the points possible. Hypothesis always defaults to 10 for me, so I am just going to go ahead and go with that. You can enter a due date here. And then I'm going to click submit. Now, to add your content that you want them to annotate, you then go in and click on the assignment that has just been created. So here you can enter the URL of the web page or the PDF. I'm going to use this Poetry Foundation link. So I'm going to copy that. If you have groups enabled and are creating a group assignment, you would check that here. Like I said, that's another session. And here we are. So over here, you have all the information telling students how to do it. I will point out that here is where you can sort your annotations. You can do that by location. And once more comments are coming in, which we'll see in a few minutes when you all are practicing, there is an option to refresh and see the new comments. All right, so to set one up with a file, we go through the same process. Go to build content, click on hypothesis. I'm not going to bother with setting up grading here. Remember, don't add the file before you click that submit button. Click on the assignment. So if you want to upload a PDF, go ahead and click on select PDF from Google Drive, even if you're going to pull it off your machine and not from Google Drive. Google Drive will give you the option to upload from your computer. So you can click on upload, you can drag and drop, or you can click select a file from your device. Select your file, click continue, and voila, there it is. And from there you can start annotating or wait for your students to begin annotating. I know that was super quick. Are there questions about the assignment setup? And do remember when sharing a PDF that it does need to be an OCR PDF. It does need to be created so that the text is highlightable. But yeah, it is so easy. It's very intuitive. The only problem I have had is the first 2 times I did it, I wanted to go ahead and add my file. Like it's pretty simple to use. I think that's a great application. All right, I'm coming back over to our slides. So I think next up is practice time. All right, so in Blackboard, you should be added to the hypothesis training course. So if you go in there and head to course content, there is an assignment at the top called session practice. And if you are having trouble finding your hypothesis assignment, or I'm sorry, if you're having trouble finding the hypothesis course, it may be under resource courses, or there may be a training section on your Blackboard page. So if you're having trouble finding the course, let us know. And Allison or Shauna, if you want to chime in here, please feel free. I'm not trying to like take over and drive.
We lost Christy.
She had to leave at 12:30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you might want to try to insert an image or a GIF.
And I will go ahead and share the assignment on screen if that will be helpful. And I can demonstrate the grading while we're here too.
Summerlin, will you share that assignment page? Yes, because mine is
Yeah,
still doing the chaotic.
Okay, yeah. So when you come into the training course and go to course content, it's this first link. So if you click on session practice, it should open up the article and you'll see your hypothesis pane over here. So you can go in and highlight, and then you can click annotate, or you could just put in a highlight, but of course we're here to annotate.
Something
You can add tags.
Oh,
Go ahead.
something else to think about is that, can you turn your mic off for a second?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So a lot of times these web articles will have a bunch of ads and pop-ups and annoying things that get in the way. And there are certain websites, or I know there's a Chrome extension that you can use that will strip it to just the article itself. So if that's a more useful thing to kind of streamline it for your students.
But if you guys are able to navigate into this, and if you're having difficulties, please let us know. As you guys, you can just start playing around and start annotating. If you want to try to put in an image from Google Images, like Shauna mentioned, what you'll notice eventually is once someone else comments on it, in the top right corner of the hypothesis, bar, yes, where the mouse is now moving, there'll be this little red button that will appear, and it won't appear until someone comments on it in real time, and it will let you refresh and see things as they're happening. So if you want to use this in a class where students are less willing to communicate, possibly verbally, there it is. It's that little update. This is a really good way to allow the shyer students to come in the moment, and it looks like I think it's one in the replies to your Zelda pinwheel. So this is also another good way of giving people a voice without having to use their actual voice. And you can just keep refreshing it, so that way it's like a constant going, which is a really nice touch. You don't have to go in and out.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Allison. While we're here, I'll go ahead and show you how to grade. One of the few hypothesis downsides is that you can't grade directly in the grade center. You do have to come in to the assignment. So when you come in, you can click on all students and you can go to a specific student. Of course, we only have one person entered as a student in this class. You will, of course, have more of them. They won't show up here until they've accessed the assignment. So that will also help you see who has been in, and their name will show up even if they haven't left a comment. So you'll know who's come in and actually looked at it. So I can click on my student Zelda pinwheel. It will show me her annotations. I can also click to see the full conversation between Zelda and other students. And then I can put in her grade. I have this, they've got out of 10. So I will go ahead and give Zelda full credit, even though I think that was kind of a sad annotation. Zelda, come on, get with the program. All right, so then we have an update, and then I'm going to come out to all students. Okay, cool. I see it's working. Excellent. All right, so any questions coming up while we are playing with hypothesis? Give a moment for questions, and I'll put our slides back up and go over the last little bit we have. All right, so while folks are playing around and exploring hypothesis a little bit, of course, there are a few downsides. First of all, you have to make sure the content is in the proper format. You have to have an OCR compatible PDF, optical character recognition. There are scanners that can do this. We have them on campus. You can definitely get help with the proper PDFs if needed. The downside that drives me a little bit batty from time to time is that Grade Center will not show that hypothesis assignments need grading. You have to go in and check the assignments themselves. So I have to give myself a reminder because I do rely on my needs grading in Blackboard. So I have to, remind myself to go back in because I do tend to try to grade the early birds and then the right at the deadline folks. However, you can go in and see, you can organize the comments by what's new, so that does make that a little bit easier. And then you can go jump straight to those students in the grading and the platform. Another downside is that while when you do a course copy, the assignments will copy over. If you need to update the document, for example, if you have students doing a syllabus annotation and you need to put up a new syllabus with new dates and new information, you can't just switch out the document. You do have to make a new assignment. And you'll need to, that means another Grade Center column, so you'll need to delete the old one. So it's not that it's hard, but it's just, these are more things to remember and more steps, and that is something that we do have to be aware of.
But it will copy over if you don't need to actually update the file. Say it's a copy of a story, it will copy that over fresh with no comments, so you don't have to change it if it's the same document, if that makes sense.
If it's okay. Oh, I was just gonna say, I know that one downside is that, mentioned earlier, was that, if it's a news website, you may not be able to use it. If it's a news website that will let you print, if you're in Google, I think any of the websites, but you can go to print. But when you print, you have the option to choose a printer or save it as a PDF. And I am one that I like to pull in news articles as often as I can. And so you can save that PDF and upload it, because I know that's a downside. If it's a password protected site, we can't use it. So we can't annotate our textbook or whatever, possibly not newspapers. But I can say, there is a way around that, at least with the newspapers, where if you are able to print it, it's a website that allows you to print without screenshotting, because that's a different story. You can save it as a PDF that way and upload it, if that's helpful.
Cool. Do you all have any questions or comments or ideas that you would like to share with us? I'm over here updating and looking at the comments and the pictures. So the hypothesis training course will stay open if you want to go in and use that as a place to play around and experiment. And you all are instructors in the course, so you can go in and move things around. I will also mention and share real quick my screen again. We've got the examples of different approaches. Shauna showed you her literature class example. I also used Allison and I use Rocketbook beacons, which let you take pictures of your whiteboard, and it will actually turn those into a PDF. And this is a really bad shot because I was using a dying marker last night. But that lets me and my students, I can put the whiteboard images up, and then we can annotate the whiteboard from the previous class, which is kind of cool. It will also get the overhead projector screen thing noted there. So that can be fun. Oh, Latoya, that's awesome. I think that would be fantastic. So
convert it to OCR, right?
Yes. And you can do it with the Rocketbook itself. I've just been using the beacons in class. A couple of other things we have in here. We've got a resource folder, and these resources are directly from Hypothesis and our rep, Erin Barker. If anybody wants a session with her to go over things in depth, or if anybody wants information on setting up groups, I'm glad to send that stuff over. So we're winding down here. If you have questions that come up after our session today, please get in touch. I'm happy to help. We would love to hear what ideas you come up with, what you end up doing with this in your class. Yes, it is already available. When you click on build content, you should see Hypothesis show up. You do have to do some scrolling, but it is down there and it is set to go. I think that we have the, okay, Latoya, I will definitely do that. I'm making a note right now. So you can set it up today and work with your students and give it a try. So please email me or call if you have questions and try it out and let us know what you think. We're pretty excited about it, obviously, and I really think this is something that could help instructors and students across the college, and we keep coming up with new ways to use it. Allison and Shauna, I feel like I'm like monopolizing time. If y'all want to hop on and say stuff, please do.
Oh, I just want to say thank you for coming to our session, and hopefully you think this is going to help you to improve your teaching. Yeah.
I'll just echo what's kind of already been said. I definitely would love to hear what ideas you guys come up with, or if you want to springboard ideas. I'm always willing to like be a soundboard. All of us are, I'm sure. But I really love hearing ideas and seeing how I could use them to help students. So yeah, I'd love to hear how you guys use it, and thanks for coming today, and yay.
Yeah, thanks y'all. I know it's lunchtime and a busy time, so we really appreciate your time. And the recording will be available after the session as well. And on that note, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.